everyone. I am Carlisia Campos. I am a software engineer on the Velero team. And today I am going to do a show and tell, a tutorial type of video showing you how to run Velero locally, which is great for if you want to play around with Velero code or if you want to actually make contributions. My cat just decided to participate. And this is absolutely the quickest way to run Velero. As a lot of people know who work with Kubernetes and Docker, having to build an image takes a little bit of time. And in this way, we take that out of the equation and we just run a binary. One restriction, though, is that if you are manipulating, changing codes to manipulate any persistent volume related operation, then this doesn't work because running locally, you don't have access to that. You really have to build an image and test your code in an actual cluster that's not like a local kind cluster or minikube. So with that said, my setup is I have a kind cluster. I already have it running. I'm not going to show you how to install that. And I also have a Minio instance, a standalone Minio running in a Docker, in my local Docker. And I'm also not going to show you how to do that because there is a quick start guide on the Minio website. And if you see here, this is the document that will show how to do it for your particular platform. And just I can show you though what's on my Docker. Here I have where is my menu? I think just yeah, sorry. It's the end of the day for me. So here I just typed the wrong thing. So here we have menu up and running and we have kind up and running. So kinds is what we're going to be using. If we look at what's in kinds, I have one node as should be expected. Kind is a single node cluster. If I see what there are for pods, if you are a total newcomer, you should know that this is all there is. Once you boot up a cluster, you should see that cube system namespace and but pretty much nothing else. Once we install Velero will have running its own namespace, which will be named Velero. So going back here, I have a little to-do list for the things that I'm going to do. So first things first, I will install Velero on my kind cluster, but so for me to run locally, I have to do this step. I have to install using the Velero install command. And I'm going to tell you what each one of these things are. So the provider is AWS, and you might find it odd because we are not using AWS at all. But that is because the interface for AWS and for Minio they are the same. The interface is the same for both. So the plugin for AWS will work with Minio. And by the way, what we do with the Minio is we use it as a storage location to store the backup files. Like we package all of the content of the resources from the cluster. We package it up in a backup format that Velero understands, and we push it to the S3 bucket. In my case here, will be a local Minio bucket. I'm saying I'm not going to be using volume snapshots because I'm not, so that just avoids Velero from creating things that I'm not going to need. The secret file, so this is pointing to an actual file that has the credentials for the Minio instance, which is, in my case, the one that comes with it. Menu and menu123 is of no significance. You are allowed to know that. It's no big deal. When I did set up menus following the instructions on the menu documentation, I named my bucket Acme Development. And this down here are all the configuration needed for Velero to set up an object that we call backup storage location, or backup store location. Sometimes we say that. And the bucket is part of that as well. And because I'm not giving it a name, it's going to be created with the name default, and it's going to be marked as the default bucket. So Velero needs not buckets, I'm sorry, backup storage location. So Velero needs one backup storage location that is the default one. So when you create a backup, you don't have to, if you don't specify anything, it's going to use whatever the default is. And so we have these arguments. And the last one here I want to explain. This is the URL where Velero is going to look and find your menu instance. For example, if my menu could be running inside the cluster itself, and I could create a service for it, and what I would put here would be the address for the name, right? The DNS for that service. But because I have menu running outside of the cluster and on my local machine, one thing that you could think that should go here is localhost with the 9000 port. But that would not work, because then Velero would look for the cluster localhost, and that's not what we want. So this is actually the IP address, my private IP address, the IP address for my network. So if you don't know, the way to find what that is on the Mac is you go to Systems Preference, and I opened the wrong thing. Let's bring it to this window. Oh, here we go. And you go to Network. In my case, I am connected through Wi-Fi, and I will find it right here. This is the address. And by the way, if you get up and move to a coffee shop where you're going to connect through their Wi-Fi, this IP address will change. It's sort of obvious, but not, so just heads up. And then, because if you are going to run this, then you have to change that URL. All right, so I'm going to copy this. Sorry for flipping so much. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Paste this here. All right, so what happened is I was cleaning up my hard drive, and I deleted the Velero binary. But this gives me a chance to tell you how to install the Velero tool, because we need to have it installed before we can do anything with Velero. So if you have a Mac, this is the easiest and quickest way. And I don't want to run using my local binary. I want to do that separately. So you can see there on the screen is the 1.3.2 version. That is the latest release we have. So now, just to double check we have it. There we go. So this error here is just saying it was looking for a server version, but it's not installed on. It's not the server. It's the server version of Velero is not running anywhere, so you wouldn't find it. So let's run the install command again. And just to show what that would look like. Yeah, so the versions are the same on the client and the server. And that means that if you recall what the command looked like, the Velero install, I didn't specify a Velero image, although I could have. If you look at Velero install help, one of the flags here is image. And you can specify, for example, a prior version of Velero or your own image that you have somewhere, your own Velero image that you have pushed to some registry. So you can do that. But if you don't specify, you will get automatically the latest, which in our case again is 1.3.2, I think. All right. So we installed Velero on a server. Let's make sure it's running. This is how I do it. So that's the Velero pod that was spun up as a result of the Velero deployment spec. And it says it's running. I'm just going to trust that it's running. Usually I will go one step further and create a backup, make sure that look at the log and make sure that there are no errors. But in fact, let's look at the log. Oops, sorry, this way. I'm going to look at the log using Octant, which is another open source tool. And this is a very fresh release of Octant. It's 0.12.0, which I downloaded just earlier today. It's a little bit different from the previous version, and I get a little bit lost. Gosh. Workloads here. So what I want to do is look at the pod, the Velero pod. And here, conveniently, I can look at the log for that pod. I don't like that it displays timestamp by default. I actually just logged a feature request for them to make this off by default. And so here's showing all containers. And just so you know, the Velero deployment needs to specify, obviously, the Velero image for it to run, but also at least one plugin, because without the plugin, we can't do anything. The plugin has the logic to connect to an S3 storage and store your backup. But Velero pipes the log from the plugin directly to the Velero log. So you will never see anything here. So in essence, if you select all containers or if you select just Velero, you will see the same thing. So the log here looks pretty good. I don't see error. And let's see, log level info. Okay, that's the default. Now, let's see what's the next thing. I think is that we're going to bring the replicas for the Velero pod down to 0, because we don't want a Velero instance running on a cluster at the same time that we're going to be running a Velero server locally. That's what I'm going to show. So I just want to do that first. And by the way, K is my alias for kube control or kubectl. So bringing that down to 0, I'm going to do get pods. I want to see, okay, it terminated really quickly. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the folder where my Velero project is. And we have a bunch of I'm already there. Great. We have a bunch of make targets. And the target that we use to build a binary locally is make local. Surprise. So we'll do that. And it will output the binary to this path right here, which is pwd, the very directory where I'm at, and this folder. And it's smart enough to know what machine I'm on and builds the binary for that machine. All right, so now let me just see my checklist here. I showed that, we did that, and we're just about to boot up the local server. All right, so we don't have Velero running inside the cluster anymore. Now, when Velero installs, it's sort of, I think of it as like two aspects of Velero. One is the Velero server that runs all the time. And the other part is the Velero, the way the Velero extends Kubernetes is by using custom resource definitions. So if I do get CRDs, we have all of these CRDs that were installed when I ran Velero install. And when I brought the replica down to 0, of course the CRDs stay there as expected. So when I run Velero locally, my local binary is going to be pinging the Velero API, and for the cluster there, so if you see on the right side of my screen, my cluster is in context, so I don't need to specify the cluster is whatever cluster is in context is what's going to use. So it's going to ping that cluster, not ping, I'm sorry. Is going to run and work with the API for Kubernetes in that cluster. Those CRDs are in the cluster, and that's how Velero is going to create backups and keep up all of these resources. But the operation on the resources, how the code, the logic, is going to be running locally. So basically, we're keeping the state of these CRDs in a cluster. And then the other piece is whenever we create a backup or create a restore, then we interact with the Minio instance, which is not even in the cluster, right? So from the perspective of interacting with the S3 storage, it really doesn't matter if we are running locally or if we are running the Velero server inside the cluster. Okay. Now, to make this work, so I have the binary there. Sorry for all the flipping. And if I do that, you see the Velero binary right there. But just running the binary will not work because we need to send the information into the server. And one of them is the credentials for the Minios. So the Velero server, even though it's running locally, knows how to access that Minio instance. And so I'm going to point to my credentials file. While I'm at it, I'm going to change the log level from info, which is default, to debug, because I want to see more things usually when I'm developing. I skipped an important piece of information. This little V here is an alias that I have that points to that binary that I just showed. And if you are curious, because I would be curious, this is my IDE, and I run on Fish shell, but of course, whatever shell you use, you'll be able to do that. Also, my config files are on my repo called .files. In my repo is my GitHub username is my first name, Carlisia, and I have a repository called .files that has all my configuration. So this little V, as you see here, just points to this. So if I didn't have the V, I could just put this big string. Now, I don't do that for two reasons. One, because this would be so long, but more importantly, when I am running things locally, I can switch between running with the Velero that I installed with Brew, which I know specifically right now is version 1. What is it again? 1.2.3? Oh gosh, I forgot. But 1.2 something or 1.3 something? Yes, 1.3.1. It's 1.3 something. And so if I do Velero, I run that version. If I run V, I run whatever version with whatever local changes I have on my branch. I hope that makes sense. So log level I'm changing, and so log level is optional. The plugin directory is not, because the Velero server, when it runs locally, it needs to know where in the world is the plugin that it needs to run, because it needs at least one. You can have multiple, but so you need one. And I have cloned the plugin repo because I also work with it. So it's running, it's placed in parallel with my Velero project. So I just do // the name of the repo or the name of the folder. And the important thing here is to make sure you have a / at the end. But other than having the / at the end, the plugin could be anywhere. So, and another important thing that I almost neglected to say is that I went to that folder and I did the same thing I did with my local Velero. I ran the make local targets, and that built a binary for the plugin. And if you notice, it's different from the Velero. Maybe should change this to make it consistent. So the plugin outputs the binary to just like right here at the output folder, whereas the Velero outputs to its output and whatever a path that represents what machine you're running on. Hope that made sense, but don't worry about it. This is the whole thing. We're going to copy this. Okay, so now I have the Velero server running locally. And this is fantastic because it's super quick. It looks good. I don't see any error. I see, excuse me. I see the debug. This is what I was looking for. All of these DBU is short for debug. So I'm definitely getting the debug logging. And if I change anything on my code, close this. And this is a code that I have that's work in progress. I'm working on a branch that is not the master branch. This code is not even on PR status. But I have here debug Carlisia. So this should be appearing in the log because there it is. So it builds my code as is. This is definitely not production code, as you would imagine. So that code that we were looking at is a controller. So it just runs continuously, and every once in a while it loops through that function. It's actually a new controller that I'm building. Well, unless sorry, end of the day I'm so tired. To be very complete, let's do that. So I changed the code. I'm not really showing you how to actually program and change things in Velero. I'm just strictly showing you the workflow for. I want to show you how to run locally, then change and run in the cluster with your codes, and then why not do it again locally? So I'm going to clear this. I'm going to run. I just arrow up once or twice. And now I should see that change I made. Sorry, it picked up the previous one. Oh, except that it didn't. You know why? I do this very frequently. Because I didn't make local. Yeah, so I changed the code. I stopped the server and ran the server again, but I never rebuilt the binary. So this is how it is. Change the code, go to your terminal, make local, then arrow up a couple times, boot up the server again, and so here it is, Carlisia demo. It's gonna pop in again because it keeps looping. Cool. So, you know, you keep developing and you keep changing your codes. You just do this over and over again. But the good news is that it's super quick. Now, what if you... So the way I develop is just to be triple sure, especially if I'm making a big change, I want to run the stuff in a cluster and see what it looks like there. So let's do that. And just to be... I'm going to change the code and say demo in cluster. Save. Now, what do I want to do? Let me go to my... Oh, yes. I'm just going to copy this because I'm lazy. Let's clear this. So the first thing I killed that local Velero server. Change the code once more. And now I'm going to say, what I'm going to do is up the replica for the Velero deployment by 1. I only need 1. So from 0 to 1, because when it's 0, it's not running. First thing I do, I want to see the pod being boot up, and it's happening so quickly. All right, so it's running. However, nothing in the spec of that deployment changed. The only thing that changed was that it was running. It was not running, and now it's running. I didn't change anything, even though I changed my code locally. It hasn't made its way there yet. So I'm going to show you. So one way that I could have put that code there was during install. I could have added the flag image and pointed to my repository / image name. But since I already have installed, I don't want to install it again. There is a one-line command I can do to do that, which is this line here. But before I put it there, I have to build it, because remember, I changed the code, but I didn't do anything with that code. And for me to be successful with this update in the cluster, I have to build the image and push the image that I built to a registry, and then it will be available for me to tell Velero, hey, this is the image, just pull this image from this location. So this is how we're going to do it. Let me just explain what we are looking at. So the actual command, I'm going to say command there, it's going to be running is make. So it's make, container, push, and manifest. These are 3 different targets in our make file. Now I am going to be sending this information to this make command, and this information is going to be processed in the make file. So when the image is done, it will have the information that I want. So one information is the registry. That's where I want this image to go to. The default registry, if you don't put anything, it will be Velero, which is a public place, public registry. The version is whatever I want it to be. I'm going to say Velero demo. So this is the tag. The manifest platforms, we don't need to pass it, but if you do specify, it will just run it will just build this one, as opposed to not passing. I think builds 4. It builds more than 1, and we don't need more than 1. Okay, so I can copy this now, go to my terminal, and this is going to take a little while. That error is not a big deal. It's just saying I'm not logged into Google Clouds, but I don't have to be. I have to look into it and see how to what it is that I'm not doing that's triggering that error. I should have a joke ready, but I don't. So sorry about that. I'm not good at telling jokes. If this was live, you could tell me a joke. By the way, this is the first time I do a screencast. So hopefully it will work into the end. It's been 31 minutes. Wow. Hope you're still with me. I don't know how to sing either. I'm sorry, I'm a bad entertainer. All right, we can start seeing at the bottom here. Things are looking good. So it's already pushed the image to the Carlisia registry. The name is the name of the, this is just the default name, Velero dash whatever platform you're running. What we did specify this, right? Remember the manifest. And Velero demo is the tag that I gave to it. And it's done. So one thing that I like doing is really double checking if it's there. Let me make this a little smaller. Okay. So the image, it's there. I'll make it bigger again. Now, okay, so we built the image with my latest code change, and we are going to push it to the cluster. Hopefully I haven't lost you yet. So to do that, we run this command. And what we are saying is, in the namespace Velero, set this image that I'm telling you for the deployment called Velero. And this is a label. And so the value here will be the registry, the name of the image, and whatever tag I gave, which is this. So with every new build, if you want to keep track and revert, you can give different tags, and that's super simple to keep like going forward and rolling back. So I copied this. Let's run it. One thing to note is, well, actually, all right. A couple things to note. One thing to note is what we did just now is we modified the Velero spec. The Velero spec before was saying the image for Velero, telling the cluster, right? You can fetch it from the Velero repository, and is this image called Velero, and the tag is 1.3 point something that I forgot. Now we said, no, forget about that. Now I want you to pull this new image. So the pod is no longer valid, the pod for that deployment. So it rebuilds, it terminates that pod, that original pod, and builds a new one. And that's what we were looking at. So now we have a new pod. And just because I like to really, really show, we're going to go into the Velero spec, the Velero deployments. We're going to look at the YAML. And I expect to see, I didn't show this the first time. So here's the image for the plugin. So go a little, which should not change. And this, if I had shown you this originally, it would show the official Velero image, the latest. So now it's showing mine. Great. So the image there, but does that image contain my code? for me to do that, I mean, I can go in the command line, but I really like Octant. I like to look through here. So I'm going to turn off the timestamp. And what was the, let me be, I changed this, I changed it a couple times. So I just want to make sure I get the right string. So right now, this filter is case sensitive. And I did not, I spent some time figuring that out. I did not expect that. I also logged a feature request to make this case insensitive by default. I don't know if they're going to agree with me. But so now you know. And if I click this thing, it should show that. It is not showing, and spoiler, I know why. So two possibilities. One, I built an image, but the image didn't pick up my code change. Maybe I messed up somewhere. Because really, this is why I'm looking at the log. Or two, which is the spoiler, I know ahead of time that this would not work, even if I did everything right, is that when I'm running Velero on a cluster, the default is info. And because when I installed Velero, the install flag, and let me actually double check that that is correct. The install command, I think, has an option to specify the log level. So Velero install help. Yeah. Is this it? I never actually set it from here. It's a global flag. This maybe will do it. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I'm not clear on that one. At any rate, that message will never show up because it was logged as a debug message. So it will just not, even if the image picked up this code change, it will not show up. So I'm going to show you how to make the log show at a debug level. And what we're going to do is change the Velero deployment, and we're going to edit it and add. So there is a server command there, and we're going to add these two flags to the command. Let me delete this because it's not necessary. So I'm going to, let me just copy this because, again, why type when you can copy and paste? So actually, just to, I mean, should be obvious that the reason why we're not seeing that is it has nothing to do with Octant. It's just the logs, is the same log that we would see here, is the same log that we were looking. I misspelled that. All right, so level info. This is the same thing we were looking at. It's a lot, so I don't expect, just trust me. I don't really like when people say that, just trust me. Okay, did I copy this? Let's make sure. And so this is going to give me the spec for the Velero deployment. I'm going to look for where that server command is. And so there's nothing there as far as log goes because the code just understands, well, if nothing has been specified, it's because we are doing the info level. So I'm going to copy this. Should go right here. Lined up like that. So that should be all lined up. We change it. And I want to go back to Octant, show pods. It's happening too fast because what I really wanted to show is I wanted to show that existing pod terminating and this new one being boot up. But just for kicks, somebody told me that that might be too cultural irrelevant for some cultures. I don't know how else I would say that. Just for fun, I want to look at the YAML for Velero from within Octant, which should look exactly the same. It should contain the change I just made, and here it is. All right. So now I'm going to go to pods. This is going to be a new pod because the deployment was changed. I'm going to go to logs, and let's see. Level info. Level info. This is unexpected. Or is it just... Oh, sorry. Okay, I think it's... Did it tag with the... No, I don't know. What was I even looking at? Oh, yeah, there's level info in level debug. Yeah, so before we weren't seeing the level debug, just level info. So here it is. Now the question is, does it have my string? And there it is. And if I say only show the lines that correspond to the filter, I will see that means that controller has looped through that code 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And if we wait a while, there'll be another one popping in here. I want to see a new one. There we go. All right. So that is how you push a local change to a Velero cluster. Of course, everything that I showed you as far as running in a cluster would work if you were running in any cluster. Not only a kind cluster, but AWS or GCP or Azure or on-prem. And again, if you are running on a real cluster, you could also, in addition to the basics, you could do persistent volume related things. And I believe that's all that I have. And let's see, let me just double check that it is all that I had. I think I could bring the circle back to running it locally, but I don't think it's necessary. It's almost an hour anyway. Just one last thing is all the information that I used to do everything that I did is contained mostly here in this area of the documentation. So built from source really gets into details about the makefile and how to make for different targets, and run locally. Also has the information that I used. The reason for this video was just to have like an end-to-end demonstration. And also for the menu configuration, there is this evaluation install. It doesn't say menu, so it might be hard to find, but the quick start evaluation shows how to use menu. But in this case, it's saying deploy menu using this spec that we have in our example folder, which is going to make menu run. It's going to create the namespace, the menu deployments, and the service. And maybe another thing I forget. It's going to create a service to connect the menu to, well, just to give you this DNS name you then use as a URL. But at any rate, you can browse and learn more. And if you have any questions, pop on the Velero channel on the Kubernetes Slack or open a ticket. We'll get back to you with answers to your questions. It was great to do this. It was a lot of fun. Again, it was my first time doing a recording of a tutorial, and it was very long because I went slowly. I should have said this at the beginning, but hopefully you felt free to speed up the video as you were watching it. Well, till next time. Bye.